Chapter 8, 11 a.m. TJ McCurry finished spraying an area of the floor about 2 feet from the bed platform and said, "Kill the lights." They had already draped the high window, so when TJ's partner Dustin Wall turned off the lights in the room, they could all see the eerie greenish-white glow. "Bingo," Dustin muttered and began photographing the evidence. TJ said, "A lot of blood here, Chief. There are some old spatters in other areas of the room, especially there around the bed, but here's the only place where somebody bled like a stuck pig. Bled enough to die." In the glow of the luminol, TJ's round face looked peculiarly gaunt. She shrugged and looked down at the old vinyl floor covering. "Somebody's done a fair job of cleaning, but you can see how strongly the luminol is reacting. I'm betting that when we pull up this floor covering, we'll find even more soaked into the concrete underneath. This is the old style of vinyl that was put down in tiles, not in a solid sheet, so the blood would have found all the crevices." "TJ, did somebody die here?" "You know, I can't be absolutely certain about that, Chief, but if you want an educated guess, I'd say somebody did. Either that or a lot of somebody's bled a little bit here at different times, which, given the obvious purpose of the room, is entirely possible. We'll sort it out, get a blood type or types for you, and DNA if you want." "I want, especially since I don't have a body." Dustin said, "The state crime lab has cadaver dogs if you want to start looking." "Not yet, not without more information. As edgy as this town is, the last thing we need is to have people and dogs out looking for another body, unless we're very sure one is actually out there." Rafe didn't say anything about psychic help, and he didn't look at Hollis, who was standing only a couple feet away from him. "TJ, can you tell me if there's a blood trail out of this place?" "I'll work on it. Dustin, do you have the shots? Then let's get the lights back on so we can see what we're doing." Rafe left her to it, admitting silently that he was relieved when the lights came back on. He'd seen luminol used before, and it always struck him as chilling. Invisible to the eye until the chemicals in the luminol reacted with it, the blood was a silent, ghostly accusation. He joined Hollis, saying, "Would I be out of line in suggesting that Isabel go back to the inn and call it a day?" "Arguable point, I suppose, but she won't go, so it hardly matters." He said, "You people are a very stubborn lot." Hollis didn't ask whether it meant FBI agents or psychics. She knew the answer to that one. Instead, she said, "There are only a handful of team leaders in the SCU. Agents Bishop trusts to head up investigations. Isabel is one of them and has been from the beginning." "You said it was a miracle she hadn't gone insane?" Rafe kept his voice low. "Yes, but she didn't go insane. That's the point. She is an exceptionally strong lady. She lives her life and she does her job, whatever the effort or the cost. What you saw happen in here is a rare thing, but similar things have happened before. It hasn't stopped her in the past, and this won't stop her now. If anything, the strong connection will probably make her even more determined to put all the puzzle pieces in place and get this killer." "He's gotten away from her twice before," Rafe said, more to himself than to Hollis. But she nodded. "Yeah, it's personal. How could it not be? It was her best friend he killed 10 years ago, in case you didn't know that. She and Julie King grew up together, practically sisters. Isabel was only 21 when it happened, in college, trying to decide what to do with her life. Taking the most amazing variety of subjects like classical Latin and computer science and botany, nerdy stuff." Hollis shrugged. "She was drifting mostly, getting by with good grades because of a good mind, not effort. Sort of shut in herself, detached, uninvolved. From all I've been told, Julie's murder changed her completely." "That isn't what triggered her psychic ability?" It wasn't really a question. "No, that had already happened." Hollis didn't offer to elaborate. Rafe wasn't surprised. "But her friend's murder more or less started her life as a cop." "I'd say so. In the beginning, she just wanted to find out who had killed Julie. That's what motivated her, what began to shape her life and future. By the time he surfaced again in Alabama 5 years later, she had a degree in criminology under her belt and worked for the Florida State Police. She apparently did routine searches of law enforcement databases on her own time, waiting for the killer to strike again. Just after he killed the second victim in Alabama, Isabel took a leave of absence and turned up there. That was when she met Bishop and turned in her state badge for a federal one. Pretty much, yeah. Rafe drew a breath and let it out slowly. So now she uses her knowledge, training, and psychic abilities to try and ferret out killers, especially this one. Tell me something, Hollis. How many more times can she go through what she did in here before it breaks her? At least one more time. Hollis grimaced at his expression. I know it sounds harsh, but it's also the truth. We take this stuff one experience at a time, and none of us can be sure when the end will come, or how. Wait a minute. You're telling me you guys know this stuff you do is going to kill you one day? I'd call that a radical interpretation of the text, she murmured. Hollis, we're not the only stubborn ones, I see. Answer my question. I can't. She shrugged, more than a little impatient now. Rafe, we don't know. Nobody really knows. We're all checked out medically after assignments, and the doctors have noted some changes in some agents. They don't know what that means. We don't know what it means. Maybe nothing. Or maybe something fatal. Look, all I can tell you is that for some agents there's a price for using their abilities. Some, like Isabel, live with pain most of the time, usually headaches. Some finish up assignments so exhausted it takes them weeks to fully recover. I know one agent who eats constantly during a case, and I mean constantly. It's like her abilities cause her metabolism to shoot into high gear, and she has to fuel her body continually in order to do her job. But there are other agents who never seem affected physically by what they do. It varies. So, no. I can't tell you using our abilities is going to kill us one day, because we just don't know. But it's possible. Sure, it's possible, I guess. It's also possible, more than possible really, that we'll be killed in the line of duty by a regular old bullet or knife or explosion of some kind. The risk comes with the job. We all know the potential hazards, believe me. Bishop is very careful to make certain we understand what we might be risking, even if it's only a theoretical possibility. Anyway, Isabel made the decision that was hers to make, to use her abilities this way. She's been doing it for years, and she knows her limits. I don't doubt that. What I doubt is that she'll stop before those limits are reached. She's dedicated, was Hollis's only response. Yeah, I get that. You face risks in your job. Why keep doing it? Rafe didn't answer, just shook his head and said, TJ and Dustin will be a while, and there's really nothing more you and Isabel can do here, is there? It was Hollis's turn to avoid the direct question. We can go back to the station, work there while you guys finish up here, get the information on the 2 previous series of murders, post it on the boards. Good idea, Rafe said. Hollis took the first chance she got to call in, which turned out to be about an hour later when Isabel left the conference room to make copies of a stack of paperwork. The number was still a bit unfamiliar, but her cell phone's address book had been carefully programmed, so it was easy to find the number and make the call. As soon as he answered, Hollis said, I didn't like doing that. Isabel's business is her own. She wouldn't talk about me behind my back, not that sort of personal stuff. He needed to know, Bishop said. Then Isabel should have been the one to tell him. Yes, but she wouldn't, or at least wouldn't tell him right now. He needs to know now. And why is that? Oh, wise Yoda. Bishop chuckled. I'm guessing because I say so is not going to be a satisfactory answer for you. I didn't accept that even from my father. It definitely won't work for you. Okay, then I'll tell you the truth. I appreciate that. The truth being that certain things have to happen in a certain order if we're to avert a catastrophe. Hollis blinked. And we know that catastrophe lies ahead because some of us occasionally catch a glimpse of the future. Bishop sighed. Hollis, we can't fix everything. We can't make the future all bright and shiny just because we know before they happen that there are troubles and tragedies waiting there for us. The best we can do sometimes, the absolute best, is to chart a careful path somewhere between bad and worse. And that path requires that I spill part of Isabel's story to Rafe. Yes, it does, this time. Next time you may be asked to do something else, and you'll do it, not because I say so, but because you can trust in the fact that Miranda and I would never do anything to injure or betray any member of the team, even to save the future. Alice sighed. I wish that sounded melodramatic, but since I know the stories and I've seen a few things myself, I'm afraid it's a literal truth. The saving the future business, I mean. We have to do what we can. It's seldom enough, but sometimes the right word or the right information at the right time can change things just a bit, shift the balance more toward our favor. When we can even do that much, sometimes we can't interfere at all. Going to tell me how you know that this is one of the things you can interfere? Miranda sees the future and takes me along for the ride. Sometimes we see alternate futures. That's when we know we can change things. Sometimes we see only one future. We see what's inevitable. That's when you know you can't. Yes. And the future I just changed by telling Rafe some of Isabel's past was a future in which he died. So why hasn't her cameraman reported her missing? Isabel asked Dana early. I think he's ashamed of himself. Apparently she told him to wait in the van while she went to check something out. He claims he doesn't know what. Anyway, she hadn't been gone 10 minutes before he was asleep, and he didn't wake up until Joey and I banged on the side of the van about half an hour ago. So long nap. He says he's been running short on sleep for days. Probably true. A lot of our technical people get fascinated with their toys and keep the weirdest hours you can imagine. Isabel frowned. You've checked with her station, with the other media people across the street? Dana nodded. Oh yeah, the last anybody saw of Cheryl was just before dark last night. Damn it, I warned her to watch her back, brunette or not. Why? Because I think the spotlight on a small town like Hastings can get pretty uncomfortable, and I wouldn't be surprised if this maniac targeted a journalist just to get us to back off. Isabel rested a hip on the corner of an unoccupied desk where the conversation was taking place. That's not a bad theory, assuming he hasn't gone too far to think logically. Off the record. Dana nodded again, this time somewhat impatiently. And I'm no profiler, but I'd expect him to target somebody who doesn't fit his clear preferences so far, just to make a statement. You're not the one I want, but you're in my way. Nobody's safe, Isabel murmured. Go away. It makes sense, doesn't it? Unfortunately, yes. Thanks for filing the report, Ms. Early. If there's anything I can do to help look for that kid, the best way you can help her and us is not to get yourself added to our missing persons list. Don't go anywhere alone, I mean anywhere, unless it's into a locked room you know damn well is safe. Pass the word to the other journalists, will you? Will do. Male and female journalists, Isabel added. Dana nodded wryly and left. Isabel remained where she was for several minutes, frowning at nothing. She was tired, very tired, and worried. If this bastard had grabbed a brunette journalist, had been angry enough to stray so far from his preferences, then why hadn't Isabel felt it? What's wrong with me? She murmured. There was no answer except for the feeling she had of something crouching in the darkness, watching, waiting. When Rafe walked into the conference room just before 4 that afternoon, he wasn't especially happy to find Ellen Moore there with Isabel. Alice and Mallory are out running down a couple of leads, she told him without going into detail. She seemed none the worse for what had happened in Jamie Brower's secret playroom, though something about her eyes told him she was still suffering a pounding headache. Rafe nodded without commenting on either her info or his own hunch and said to Ellen, Please tell me you have a reason other than idle curiosity for being here. My curiosity is never idle. Should have warned you about him, Isabel. You can only believe about half of what he says on a good day. See, this is what happens when you grow up with a guy who becomes a cop. Ellen said he turns into a suspicious bastard right before your eyes. Not without reason, Rafe retorted. You've been a pain in my ass since I was appointed. I've been doing my job. Isabel intervened before they could begin rehashing past offenses, saying Alan received something a bit unexpected in yesterday's mail. Rafe stared at Alan. And you're just now bringing it in? I've been busy. Alan, one of these days you're going to go too far. Consider this a warning. Remember when the Buzz Agent packs came with all sorts of fancy stickers and color stationery, etc. Anywho, sorry, I got distracted. Despite the calm tone, Alan was perfectly aware that his boyhood friend was deadly serious. He nodded, not really having to fake the sheepish expression. Noted. Without commenting on the byplay between the men, Isabel handed Rafe a single sheet of paper in a clear plastic evidence bag. I've already checked it. No prints except his. The note, block printed yet virtually scrawled in a bold, dark hand on the unlined paper, was brief. Mr. Moore, the cops have got it all wrong. He isn't killing them because they're blondes. He's killing them because they're not. Not blondes? Rafe said, looking at Isabel. Yeah, but they were, she said. At least Jamie and Tricia were natural blondes. Alice and Carol used hair color. But he stopped himself. Isabel finished a comment for him. She matched top and bottom, but the lab results are in, and they say she used hair color. It's not all that common for a woman to dye her pubic hair, especially when the change is so drastic and she's at a stage in her life when looking good naked is a major goal. In any case, Allison's natural hair color was very dark. Rafe met Alan's interested gaze and said, This is off the record. You realize that? Yeah, Isabel's already warned me. Giant red federal warning accompanied by flags, stamps, sealing wax, oaths of secrecy, and appropriate threats of being transported to Area 51 and turned into a lab rat. Isabel smiled but said nothing. Just as a point of interest, Alan commented, Cheryl Bain is a brunette. Cheryl Bain, Isabel said, is missing, as are others on an unfortunately lengthy list. We don't know that anything has happened to any of them. Yet, she agreed. Alan eyed her, then continued, Anyway, when all is said and done, and you've got the guy, I reserve the right to inform the public that I was contacted by the killer. Were you? Isabel murmured. Third person, Rafe noted, studying the note. He isn't killing them because they're blondes. This could have been written by someone who knows the killer, knows what he's doing. Or maybe, Alan offered, he's schizophrenic and believes it's not really him killing these women. You just want this to be the killer, Rafe said in an absent tone. Well, yes, this story could be my Watergate. Isabel pursed her lips. No, you're Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy, not your Watergate. It could make my career, Alan insisted. Yeah, Isabel was politely interested. And do you happen to remember the name of the journalist who was supposedly contacted by Jack the Ripper? Alan scowled. Shatter a man's dreams, why don't you? Do you remember? It was over 100 years ago. And the most famous serial killer of modern times. Countless books have been written about him, movies made about him, theories as to his identity endlessly debated. And yet, the name of that journalist doesn't exactly spring readily to the tongue, does it? Do you know it? Alan challenged. Of course. But then I specialize in serial killers, more or less. Everybody in the business has studied the Ripper case. It's practically murder 101 in behavioral science at Quantico. Everybody wants to be the one to solve it, including you. Oh, I don't think it'll ever be definitely solved. And I don't believe it should be. Some things should remain mysteries. You don't really believe that? Yes, I do. We should never, ever believe life or history holds no surprises for us. That way lies arrogance, and arrogance can blind us to the truth. Which truth? Any truth, all truth. Her voice was solemn. Alan sighed and got to his feet. Okay, before you start calling me Grasshopper, I'm going to leave. I'm sure I have a pebble around here somewhere if you want to stay and test your readiness, Isabel said, still solemn. Somehow I don't think I'm fast enough, Alan said, not without a note of honest regret. He offered them both a casual salute, then left the conference room, closing the door behind them. Good job of distracting him, Rafe said. Maybe. With any luck, he'll spend at least the next few hours on the internet or in the library reading up on Jack the Ripper, just so he can tell me the name of that journalist the next time I see him. It'll occupy his mind a little while. She leaned back in her chair and rubbed the nape of her neck with one hand, frowning slightly. Still got that headache? It comes and goes. So far, there's no sign of Cheryl Bain. Her station has backed up Dana Early's missing persons report with one of their own, and Hollis and Mallory are checking out the rest of the properties owned by Jamie Brower. You still want to find that box of photos? I want to find whatever is there. Speaking of which, your forensics team confirmed blood in Jamie's playhouse, I gather? A lot of blood. He nodded. Yeah, you're right about that. And a faint blood trail to the door. TJ figures the body was wrapped in plastic. I'm guessing it was put into a car and hauled somewhere. They're going over Jamie's car now, but we didn't find anything when we checked it bumper to bumper after she was killed. Isabel shook her head. She wouldn't have panicked, and she was too smart to transport a body in her own car. It would have been her playmate's car, and I'm betting she got rid of it afterward. Very rid of it. Like maybe sink it to the bottom of one of the lakes in the area, with or without the body inside. That, he agreed, is all too likely. He hesitated, then added, Did you pick up anything from Alan? No, he's a very closed book. Not uncommon for a journalist. They keep a lot of secrets, as a rule. Most of us find it difficult to read them, even the telepaths. You think his guess about the killer being schizophrenic was right? I think it's at least as likely as any other theory we have. Maybe more than likely. She drew a breath and spoke rapidly. One school of thought proposes 4 different types of serial murderers: visionary, mission-oriented, hedonistic, and control-oriented. The mission-oriented is out to eliminate a particular group he feels is unworthy of living. Common victims for this type of killer are those easily categorized: prostitutes, the homeless, the mentally ill, or plumbers. Rafe blinked. Plumbers? I'm just saying, mission-oriented serial killers target groups. Unless our guy is out to kill all women, or at least all successful women, a task even a madman would have to find daunting, and I don't believe he's mission-oriented. Sounds logical to me. Next. The hedonistic killer is after pleasure or thrills when he kills. He may get his jollies from the kill itself, from the arousal and gratification of what's basically a lust murder. He may enjoy the planning stages, the stalking of his prey, or he may find pleasure in the consequences of the kill if, for instance, he gains a kind of freedom by killing family or people he perceives as tying him down somehow. Control-oriented type. His thing is having power over the victim, especially the power of life and death. If he rapes, it's for control and domination, not thrills. And this type generally doesn't kill his victims immediately. He likes to torture, both physically and psychologically. He wants to draw it out, savor his power over them, watch their helplessness and terror. You must have hellacious nightmares, Rafe said. She looked at him with a little half-smile. Oddly enough, no. My nightmares tend to come while I'm awake. Rafe waited a moment, giving her an opening, but it was obvious she didn't intend to take it. So our guy is not likely to be control-oriented, or at least not driven by that, since he doesn't waste any time at all in killing his victims. And the visionary type of serial killer, I'm assuming, is the nail Alan may have hit on the head. Alan and the note sent to him. She tapped a red fingernail against the plastic sleeve note. Rafe had placed atop the stack of papers on the conference table in front of her. This makes me wonder, it really does, if it's not purely a ruse designed to throw us off track, and we have to assume that's at least possible. Then this note could tell us a lot about our killer. I'll need to make a copy for us and send the original to Quantico, by the way. The handwriting experts may be able to tell us something. As for what the note says, he wants us to stop him? If we accept this as written and as written by the killer, then some part of him does. The sane part, Isabel paused, frowning. The least common type of serial killer is the visionary, someone who sees visions or hears voices commanding him to kill. As in Son of Sam. Yep. He usually attributes the voices to God or some kind of demon and feels himself helpless to disobey them. He's not in control, the voices are. They tell him to kill, who to kill, when to kill. Maybe why those particular people have to be killed. He may hear the voices from childhood, or it may be a sudden psychosis brought on by stress or trauma. Some people believe a chemical change in the brain is responsible, but as I said, we don't know a whole hell of a lot about how the brain really works. In any case, the visionary killer feels he's controlled by something alien, something that is no part of himself. Sometimes he ignores or fights the voices or visions for years before they finally overpower his will. Bottom line, he's a puppet with someone else or something else pulling his strings. Okay, Alice said, studying the notes in her hand and then looking up as Mallory pulled the police jeep to the curb and parked. This should be it, last place on Jamie's list of properties. What are we expecting to find here? Mallory wondered, eyeing the boarded up front window of what had once, years before, been a gas station. According to her broker, Jamie planned to sell this place. Yeah, but he also said that wasn't the original plan. She bought this property meaning to raise what's here and build a nice little place to fit in with the boutiques popping up at this end of town. It would have vastly increased the value of the property. Then she very suddenly decided to just sell out. But she made that decision about several of the properties we've looked at, and the broker didn't say suddenly, he said somewhat unexpectedly. Someone unexpectedly about 3 months ago. Isabel says that fits the time frame. It's when Jamie started showing signs of nerves, deciding to unload so much of her property virtually all at once, even if it meant taking a loss, was out of character. And when people do things out of character, there's usually a good reason behind the actions. Like she accidentally killed a lover, maybe? But what was the plan after she sold out? Did she mean to get her hands on all the cash she could so she could leave town? Could be. Isabel thinks there's a possibility. Then why are we checking out these places? She wouldn't have hidden the photo box or any other keepsake in a place she was going to sell. You don't think we're going to find a body in there? Well, you know as well as I do, the State Crime Network coughed up a list of at least 3 women of roughly the right age reported missing in this general area at about the same time Jamie got nervous. The police in each district believe all 3 women did not leave of their own free will, which makes homicide at least a possibility. And if things did get out of hand in one of Jamie's little games, she had to do something with the body. Hide it in a building she owned herself and was planning to sell? I wouldn't call it a smart thing to do, unless she figured out a way to completely destroy the body or completely hide it, even if the building came down. Or unless she planned to be far away and living under an assumed name or something by the time anything was discovered. Interesting possibilities, Mallory agreed. Okay, grab your flashlight and let's check it out. Isabel turned her gaze to the bulletin boards across the room, which had, Rafe noted, acquired what looked like canvas drop cloths that could be conveniently lowered to cover the boards whenever unauthorized persons were present. The cloths were lowered now, presumably because Alan had been in the room. Absently, she said Mallory thought the drop cloths would be a good idea, so she fixed them. We can keep the boards covered most of the time unless we're in here working. Less chance of too much information leaking out. Isabel, could a visionary killer gain control over his voices for years between killing sprees? Could he live normally during those years? That would be unusual. But would it be possible? Could it be? Are we dealing with a killer who really isn't responsible, at least legally, for what he's doing? That might depend on the trigger and the reason or reasons behind all this. What do you mean? I mean, the human mind, the human psyche is a very complicated beast. Generally speaking, it knows how to protect itself, or the most fragile aspects of itself. If he's hearing voices or seeing visions and they're commanding him to do things utterly alien to his nature, then sure, he could forget about them the moment the voices or visions stop. For years on end, maybe. And then something happens in his life to trigger the psychosis, and his sick and twisted alter ego comes out to play. For 6 weeks, 6 women, 6 murders. The number, the time period, both have to be relevant, either tied to an event somewhere in his past or tied to the psychosis, to his voices. Which is your guess? Isabel thought for a moment, then said childhood. The majority of the traumas that affect us most deeply occur in childhood. It's when we're most vulnerable. What about the idea that he's schizophrenic? There are schizophrenics able to function with medication and other treatment. No pharmacy within 100 miles has filled a prescription for the sort of medication that would be needed. Rafe lifted his brows. Already checked that out? Well, the profile noted the possibility of schizophrenia, so it seemed prudent. An inquiry from the Bureau tends to carry a bit of weight, and since we weren't asking for specific patient information or identification, all the pharmacies were happy to cooperate. Okay, so we can be pretty sure he isn't being treated for schizophrenia, which doesn't rule out him having it, or that he's getting psychiatric treatment without medication. We haven't checked with doctors, because they wouldn't disclose the information, not willingly. They have a responsibility to report it if they believe a patient has committed or is about to commit a violent crime, but that sort of treatment can take years before the doctor truly begins to understand his or her patient and understand what the voices are making him do. Exactly. In any case, my guess is that our guy isn't getting treatment of any kind. Whether he's aware of being sick is an open question. Whether he knows what he's done is another one. From the information we've gathered so far, there's just no way to be certain. Earlier, you said some schizophrenics were literally possessed by another person, another soul trying to take over. Is that possible in this case? Isabel shook her head. So far, we've never encountered a person in that condition who wasn't in a mental institution and under restraints or drugged into a stupor. We don't believe such a person could function normally under any conditions, far less something like this. There's just too much violence going on in the brain itself to allow even the appearance of normalcy. And our killer appears normal. Yes. No matter how screwed up his childhood may have been, or how many voices he might be listening to, he's able to function normally to all outward appearances. After a moment, Rafe said, I think I'd prefer an evil killer who knows exactly what he's doing, sick as it is. At least then it would be simpler, she agreed wryly. Black and white, no shades of gray. No agonizing over who or what is really responsible. No reason to hesitate or regret. But you know as well as I do that it's seldom that easy. Yeah. As Hollis said, the universe never seems to want to play it that way. Listen, we aren't talking about a psychic killer, are we? Christ, I hope not. With a sigh, she returned her gaze to his face. True visionary killers are delusional, Rafe. They believe they hear the voices of demons or the voice of God. They're being commanded to do things they wouldn't ordinarily do, for reasons the sane among us would find completely nuts. They aren't psychic. What they're experiencing isn't real except inside their own twisted minds.